moderator this morning, we have Chris Soju out of Jamaica. So I turn you over now to Chris. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Dan. Then having done all over, I said only to stand here pretty. It's your taking. Anyway, the issue of extension. Child. This morning, and I think we have a wonderful mix here. We're here from Steve Maxime from Trinidad, being from field officer to change management officer, and from Alain Thermiol, Haiti. We hear about strategic planning for extension of health. I am particularly interested in these areas because as a journalist working with the Jamaica cleaner, I interact with farmers, and we have had a number of initiatives have failed with the best intentions, all the money from the international agencies, but just getting it off the ground, getting the farmers to buy into it. We had a particular case with Ministry of Technology, which the University of the West Indies, I don't know if Dr. Taylor has been yeah, they decided that, policymakers decided that, okay, in the UK, the rest of Europe and America, people wanted yams at half a pound or 1 pound yam because they don't want this 3 pound, 5 pound yam like we like in Jamaica. You would just peel 1 time or 2 times, because if you have a 3 pound yam in a small pan, every time you put it in the fridge and take what you have to cut off a piece. They invested heavily. When they went on to Jamaica, spent all the money to put in the thing, and the extension officers working with them. And within the first, 2 years or something like that, the farmers just opted out of it because they like their 5 pounds, their 8 pound yam. Because in terms of their ego, the Jamaicans, exactly on the rest of it, a man with a 40 pound yam gets into the PFS kitchen and starts as a big yam. As a big yam, you know? They didn't care about the fact that Europe was interested in a yam that they could just peel 1 time and that kind of thing. They failed miserably. They had a lot of publicity, and they also got a lot of publicity after they failed. So I'm particularly interested in hearing not only what the policymakers they trickle down, how much of the information is taken from the farmers and comes back up to implement the policy. So, Mr. Max.
Thanks. Good morning. I have been asked by Dan to talk about one of my favorite topics, food and nutrition. I have great difficulty, let me say from the beginning, talking about a policy on food and nutrition. I've never heard about a policy on housing and shelter. So I don't know where food and nutrition come from. As far as I'm concerned, food is about wants. Nutrition is about need. When I think of my old biology lessons about the signs of life, growth, respiration, irritability, whatever, nutrition, never mention food. Food, we need food, we want food, we use food for all sorts of purposes. Social activities, celebrations, the follow religious doctrines, etc. Whereas there are a number of religions that mandate what type of protein you should eat. None of them are against protein generally. None of them are against fats and oils. None of them are against carbohydrates. So that there's a problem I have with this whole food and nutrition talk, which I have brought up at the highest forum in our parts, which is CARICOM, the CARICOM Secretariat. Because we keep talking about food security, and food has no relationship with nutrition when these talks are. So we start talking about all sorts of fancy things, and the policymakers and the government officials and so start telling you about a 2,000 calorie diet. As I've been at pains to point out, my very first regional assignment was in St. Kitts in food and nutrition surveillance. And I knew you could get 2,000 calories a day by drinking 2 gallons of sugar water. So telling you 2,000 calories doesn't impress me. So that whenever we start talking about food and nutrition, I get a little worried. Because why I love food like everybody else. I think we have a nutrition policy is what we should be talking about. And I've tried at length and at great embarrassment to them who have often hired me to do these kinds of things. They keep saying that they're not really that interested in food bank. In the same way that there's no housing and shelter policy. The need is shelter. Housing, fancy housing with a view of the Gulf and so, that's okay, that's fine. But the real need is shelter. So that I have a difficulty, let's say, with doing that. But it's meant to introduce this whole business of the role of extension. And where do I get my bona fides to talk about that? I spent 10 years in the Agricultural Development Bank in Trinidad as a change agent. That was the term, that was the current term there. Because those of you in the room who work in extension would know that we have gone through a really interesting series of changes. I've been lucky enough to have a front row view of extension in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, so whatever you want to call them. And then here we are in 2011. And from my early interaction with extension when Tom Henderson was the regional guru, local Tom Henderson, this is his father. Extension was about farm and production. You were advisory agents, you were supposed to go out there and help these farmers who didn't know what the hell they were doing to get their production up. But we were interested in growth of the sector. Then a whole sort of development talk started. And you can't just have this growth, this blind growth, there must be development as well. So we went from the farm-based production to the farm home system. How many of you here were involved in extension when the farm home system was the big thing? So yeah. We went to this shift to the farm home system. And you're now, as an extension agent, now mind you, it's the same training program you're going through. You either went to ECIA, GSA, you either went to the Eastern Caribbean Institute of Agriculture and Forestry in Trinidad, the Jamaica School of Agriculture, which in those days used to be headed by Aston Wood and these fellows, or you went to GSA, Guyana School of Agriculture. Those were the primary feeder institutions for extension officers in this part of the world. And with the same training, you were asked to then forget all the technological advantages you brought to the job because they outperformed us graduates hands down because they were trained to do just that. They understood the technologies we were supposed to be the agricultural science. And there's a difference between the two, which escapes a lot of people and puts us into a lot of hot water. But suffice to say that they went from trying to get farmers to produce more, to make more money, because apparently that was the feeling was that these farmers weren't doing whatever they were supposed to be doing right, they weren't making enough money. We went from that phase to the farm home system, and you're supposed to consider the farmer now as part of a unit. And I'll tell you why that struck me so much. While I was working at the bank, we often gave loans to farmers, especially pig farmers. And I remember this particular case where we had this fellow living in a decrepit little house, and we wanted to build farrowing crates for him. Now, a farrowing crate is a specialized structure with blocks and so to keep the soil from crushing the piglets when they're young. Here's a man living in a board house, and you're going to buy blocks for him to fix his pig pen. Now, anybody with a modicum of sense would know that unless you put T on those bricks and H on the bricks, he is going to use those bricks to fix his house, which is what he did, which makes a lot of sense. So at that time, we realized that you can't be giving people loans to fix their pig pen and living in a decrepit little shop. He is going to use the blocks for that, which is any sensible person to do that. So then we started thinking that you have to give the loan now, not just to improve the farrowing, but to improve the child rearing as well. How can you be more concerned about the piglets than the man's family? So we went from that phase of being production and farm driven to being farm home driven. And that worked well for a while. But all the while, it was very paternalistic. Almost mimicking what we are doing here. You are dozing, trying to stay away, and I'm talking as if I know what I'm talking about. So the extension officers would go and tell farmers what to do. farmers being brighter and us generally would pick and choose what they did because the decision affected them in their livelihoods. And then you had the arrogant little people, young people, going out there talking to 50 and 60-year-old farmers, telling them how to do what they've been doing for the last 40 years, which is madness, absolute madness. And it was madness until the technology changed. Now mind you, when it's a new technology, you are out there, you can deal with a 50-year-old farmer because you know the technology. And especially if you know the science behind technology. Because it's possible to use technologies and don't have a clue about the science. And those cell phones that we walk around with are a perfect example of that. Very few of you, any of you know how the hell that thing works. You hear Dr. Nick talking about radio waves and it might affect you and then, you tell people you never see it too close to ears and hell, you might fry your brain. You don't have a clue, right? Some of us remember, those of us who are maybe at procreating age, don't want to put it in our pockets because the hair is affecting them. So we don't know where to keep it. But in the end, you're using a technology and you don't have a clue about the science. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have been using technologies without understanding the science behind it for eons. The wheel, we realized we could move heavy objects. The science behind the wheel, the science of an inclined plane and lever, that wasn't known until centuries after. So it is possible to use a technology and have no clue about the science. And there we were, asking these young officers to go to talk to very experienced farmers in the absence of a new technology to share. When it was a new technology, they went out. And the farmer was not accustomed to doing X and Y, and you have a new technology now, like your mini-set. Your mini-set was a new technology based on a perception that that is what people wanted, and that is what would make people happy. That didn't work out. So we went from farm-based production to the farm-home system. And that worked for a while, as I said. We were all very keen to work with the farmers, get the family unit going. That's a productive unit. We're not going to just buy blocks for the pig pen now, we're going to buy blocks so you can fix your house as well. Again, limited amount of success. Then we realized that apart from being an advisor in terms of ensuring that this man or woman is a low-cost producer, they threw another curve at it. Food safety became the big thing. So we went from just trying to produce more to now we have to produce more, but it must be safe. And who determined what was safe? People somewhere. Because in this part of the world, we all knew that if it didn't kill you, it would purge you. And if it didn't purge you, it would fat you. So that we went along merrily. People were selling their vegetables on the side of the road, on the pavement, etc. Merrily. We had these particular microflowers that, regardless of what we ate, we knew how to handle it, stomach-wise. Because we were exposed all the time. None of us were drinking bottled water, so we didn't have. Thank you. You always try to shut me up now. You're actually trying to. Yeah, so we are moving from this whole era of trying to produce more, trying to advise these uneducated, recalcitrant farmers how to produce more using our marvelous new technologies. And as I said, it worked for a while. And then we moved the bar again. Now that they're producing more and at lower costs, we started telling them that, these pesticides that we advised to use a couple of years ago, we're not too sure about that again. We have a feeling that it causes cancer and so on. Yeah, we're not too sure you should be doing that still. So after again, merely welded, and I say welded as in W-E-L-D, welded to the CP3. And they think that they can't go into the field unless they have a backpack with them and spraying something. You now drop this bomb on them that we ain't too sure about that again. This business of spraying everything, let's do some traditional things. So the old fellas in the audience will get up and say, you mean we should go back farming like how my father used to farm? And all these bright young extension officers and scientists like myself had to humbly say, because all this that we just tell you, over the last 15 years, we ain't too sure again. And then we wonder why these same farmers watch us and laughing, right? So we are there parading, it's in this new system. So then food safety became the big thing. So I was telling some people in Belize the other day, in a district in Belize that is world famous for citrus. The farmers in that area can't even squeeze 2 oranges, put it into a bottle and sell it side the road. Because they have new food safety standards now from the Bureau of Standards. You follow? So if you go out there and squeeze this juice, put it in a little bottle without a label, without an expiry date, or without a batch number, and some American tourists passing and can't drink that juice and feel upset, they can sue you for half of what you own. So now, the new thing now is you must advise, but you must advise with food safety as a major thing. So you're asking the extension officer, the frontline staff, to constantly change and adapt to these changing requirements. So they're no longer just change agents. There are people out there to enforce standards. They're compliance officers. So then we miraculously came up with good agricultural practices. Which is what? You should call them good old practices. The same thing that your grandfather was doing. Knowing that if you cut grass, you had to use it as much, or leave it to form compost properly, you know. Not the rat apartments I see people have in their yard. Because in this part of the world, everybody when they cut grass is putting a pile. They ask them, what's that? Compost. No. That's a rat apartment. Especially they had scraps of meat and so on. That is not compost. That has nothing to do with compost. If you're not tilling it, and if you haven't started it with soil, if you haven't made sure that the thing is breaking down properly, you are not making compost. You might have a very good mulch. But if you forget yourself and put scraps on your table there, you have a rat apartment. You have a vermin apartment. And vermin equals leptospirosis. And especially here in Dominca, we know leptospirosis kills agricultural officers here. So we're not playing that. Alright? So you have an extensionist that you are training in the same way. You have to modify the training. You're training them out the same way for the production-based system. Then you ask them to do the farm-home system. Now you ask them to be food safety officers. Then you ask them to be GAP inspectors. Because that's what you are, you're a good agriculture practice inspector. And now, we've turned another corner. Now that you produce the food cheaply and it's safe, we now realize that you didn't produce it in an environmentally friendly way. We're kind of sorry, but you use too much fossil fuels in the production here, and all these pesticides were made with fossil fuels, and even the carbon dioxide build up and global warming. And so really, what we wanted to do now is to produce in an environmentally friendly manner. Why don't you use solar? You know, what is this thing with all this gas building and producing all this carbon dioxide? Now that we have miraculously realized that we're messing up the planet, everybody has to play Trump and follow suit. Once the Americans signed that Kyoto Protocol there, that spelled the start of the end in terms of environmental compliance. Because if an American producer has to be sensitive to what energy sources he uses, what packaging material he or she uses, you have to follow the same rules to it. There's no way to let in your stuff in there if you aren't playing by the same rules. So that we have asked our extensionists to constantly change from the roles that Tom Henderson mentioned in his seminal piece. Most of you as extension officers would have read that, would have seen that. Conflicts in the role of the extension officer in the Caribbean, where you're seen as a government employee once, enforcing, talking about keeping track, and then you're here as an advisor and confidant. And those roles don't always overlap easily. So So now you're at the stage where you're compliance officer. So my job this morning was to start that trend of discussion, and later on in the rest of the lab we talk about it. Thank you very much.
Steve, I heard you enunciating all the problems, but I didn't hear that any, in terms of implementation, any suggestions. And I was a bit disappointed that based on your experience.
That's my callback. That's my callback. If I give
All right, and audience here, please jump in anytime and challenge him. And we're going to invite Mr. Thurmill.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Good morning for those who don't know what bonjour means. Do you mind if I sit down?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, because you helped me out with all you've been saying. Yeah, I will just add it on everything you just said, and I will go on with my presentation. Okay, it's a pleasure to be here once more this year to talk about Haiti, the French-speaking part of the Caribbean. Well, talking about the strengthening communication and knowledge for food FNP. What does FNP stand for? FNP. Food and Nutrition Program Policy. Okay. Well, I will use a lot of what you said, Steve. Well, in Haiti, we inherit our extension program service, an extended service back to 1934. After the Americans invited the country from 1915 to 1934, and then when they left this extension service, which meant mostly composed as this skeleton. Like you have an agronomist, and the agronomist has a technical agent, a technician, and then under this technician you have the agent who works directly with the farmer. It's basically the structure that the service has, and this unit is linked to the thing in the ministry. All the director in the country, and also in the what they call it, the central bureau. Well, this thing has worked, has its good part and its bad part from 1934 to 1986. We had a lot of big projects going on in Haiti. It's obviously the thing you were saying. You are having agents working with the farmers, and also mostly oriented to increase the production, increase the yield. We had a big project, a big agency in these days called Dendai. It was mainly a bureau that provides credit and technical assistance to farmers, and it works pretty good. I was not there at this time, but everybody recalled that it was the good old days, and so you really have these extension services acting with the farmer, and also have things coming from the ground to the top. But as Steve mentioned, it was the same. It wasn't mostly from top to down rather than down to up. Well, after 1986, we have been, as you know, entering 25 years now, the turmoil, political instability and stuff like that. And what we have regarding the extension service, what we saw a decline of the state authority and a multiplication of new type of extension services, but mostly related to project and NGOs. So what you have, you will have those projects and NGOs who will conduct their extension services, extension assistance, and the state will be also there, but with lack of money and also aging among extensionist person. So that was the situation until now. According to that, in 2010, it was last year, the state had called everybody to do reflection, to think about how they can have a new, well-adapted extension service, and to write down an extension program. And well, like I mentioned, some observation was the aging process. Most of the extension agents are quite old now, and well, agriculture, I guess, in most parts of the Caribbean and of the world is not well, not agriculture. The state does not appeal young professionals. They prefer to go to private sector, NGOs and stuff like that. They are more paid, well paid. We have also a problem with the knowledge. So those people, those folks with all this knowledge are in their way to go on their own with those knowledge. So there is a gap between renewing the generation of extensionists. So this is another problem. Also, there is a problem of money for the state. I'm talking. There is a lot of money cruising around in Haiti. Last year, I thought about those what do they call this mercenary NGO. After the earthquake, we have like more than 400 new NGO flocking the country. So this is all those reality, and this money is not ruled by the state, so they don't have control in it also. And technology, new technology. Well, if you are talking about aging, if we are talking about young people doesn't want to enter the state, and if you are talking also about money, so you can imagine that new technology. Well, the example, we do use new technology well as extension tools. During the last campaign, political campaign, the president who is now elected has been SMS everybody, Jay, go vote for me. So we do use it, but in a political way. But I guess this can be used also for the more better thing. And also we have on the other observation is the political willingness to follow up. You know, I talked earlier about the political instability, so each time you have a new government and they don't continue what has been initiated. So each time it's like you're restarting again. So an extension, whatever it is, won't last long and won't be, you don't have a global understanding of what they want to do. What else? Also, the thing is, we have in Haiti 1 million small farmers with an average of 1.5 hectares on their land. The state has the responsibility to feed about 10 million people. And also to provide a better life standard for those people in Haiti. But according to we have a coordination, an entity that is devoted to monitor the food safety in the country. And according to them, there is less than 2 million people living in Haiti in food insecurity. And well, everything that you said, food insecurity, And we have been talking about food security, food safety, and even they thought in some time about food sovereignty. That means that a country should be allowed, should be able to choose what food they want to buy and to eat. So also there is this program for the schools in Haiti also, and I talked about that briefly with Ellen the other day. The national food program for food, it's canteen is in English? No, canteen. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's the food that they provide, I guess, 1 or 2 meals a day in the public school. And also another interesting thing to say about Haiti is about the food ability in the country. Roughly, we are sufficient for about 40%, 45% of what we have. We exported 50%, and the food aid counts for 5%. So you have the whole 100%. But why I mention it here, it's to highlight to you that Haitians pay to have their food. Mostly 95% of the food that we consume, we pay for it. Whether we have it produced in the country or we import it. And we only have like 5% of the food that is given by the World Food Program and other NGOs and so on. Moving forward, now we can see the potential we have in Haiti. We are kind of land-rich. The country is 27.7 thousand square kilometers. On that, they estimate that there is 500,000 hectares of plain, so we can do agriculture quite. It's about 23% of the country, and in those plains we have like 80,000 hectares irrigated land, but this superficie can go up to 150. Well, Haiti is like here, it's kind of sloppy with soap. Not pardon my French, excusez-moi. Well, okay, the right word is illy, not sloppy, illy. Like here, more than half of the country has slopes more than 40%. Also, we have the same climate, so this is an advantage also. We can do fishery. We have like 1,050 kilometers of coastline. And also we have several lakes, inside lakes, man-made or natural lakes. Livestock, we have a potential for small ruminants, poultry and pork. Fruit tree, we are exporting mango to mostly North America and also Dominican Republic, even though the part for the Dominican Republic is kind of the hidden part of the trade. Coffee, cocoa, and so on. And also there is a potential for wood and timbers, sweet potato, yams, and so on. Okay, going back to this nutrition part of it, like Steve, for me, it's kind of challenging to link the need and the demand with the food production and the nutrition fact, the number of calories, the daily value allowance and stuff like that. But anyway, what happened with the national program for national school feeding program, there is 3 or 4 ministries working together, but it has been going on for several years now. But the good thing now, the state realized that they should come closer. So what happened during the past 3 years, this program has been calling for people to buy food inside the country. So this is a new market for the farmers, even though all the procurement procedures is kind of tough. But anyway, this is a new market, and the good thing about it, is that I guess 4 years ago I was talking to a guy from the World Food Program, and I was telling him why they don't buy produce from the farmers, and then they can have this produce in their pipeline. And he responded to me by saying, well, Haiti doesn't produce enough for itself, so the policy for the World Food Program is to buy produce around the world, and then they can assimilate it to the country. But I guess now since last year they have been changing or kind of adapting their policy, because they have a lot of means of transportation for those stuff, so they help the feeding food program to move the project around. And also they participate with the government by, in this, to buy stuff locally rather or in addition to buy it overseas. So this is a new market, and this is a good thing also. But also talking about the nutrition, Ellen mentioned it, and also Lisa probably mentioned it the other day. This is this new fashion of this new habit we have been taking since 1986. After the Diwali era, so it was the big freedom. So eating local was assimilated, I can say, like the dictatorship era. So now I'm free, it's better to import stuff and to drink stuff coming from overseas. So during the past 25 years, we have been interested more in what we don't produce in the country, mostly already processed food and stuff like that. So we are talking about ham, about but the good thing, the more important thing is rice, because Asian before that ate rice like once a week or twice a week, mostly during weekends. But in 1986, the price of the rice, imported rice, was way lower than the rice produced in the country. It still is, but what happened, it's discouraged the producer of rice in the country, and during the 1990s, early 1990s, they haven't blocked the wood and asked the government to reconsider having taxes to protect the production inside the country. But anyway, so now Asians eat rice every day, even twice a day. So rice has become the daily consumption. You can imagine that in 2008 we have this problem with the price of the rice rise worldwide. It affected the country and the consumers, there was also political battle between the folks. But anyhow, officially, the Prime Minister has to resign because of this situation. And so what is happening now? There is some going back to the old days. People are willing now, more interesting to eat local stuff like yams, like root and tubers. In the past, it was difficult to find in all kind of restaurant those type of stuff. But now, even in in some good restaurants you can have some local stuff like yams, like tumbers and like sweet potato and stuff like that. So the tendency is kind of reversing. And also I have an example. A couple of years ago, there was this huge campaign for breastfeeding à l'état maternel, and so even there was the jingle. Well, I'm not a good singer. I will sing it for you.
And at this point, I'd like to invite participation from the floor. What I'd like to understand is how we can make the message. How do we get the message to the farmers that, you know, to make them more effective? Because the role of the extension officer, Steve seems to be complaining that it has to change. It's changing. It has to evolve in terms of what is happening now. We're looking to go further up the value-added chain from the local markets. In Jamaica, we have cocoa, which numbers in the top 5 plantation of cocoa in the world. And we sell it for a pittance. And when it comes back as purchased chocolate, we pay like 500 times what it is. So the role of the extension officer and getting this into the family getting more has to change.
My question goes to Steve. On Tuesday we went to Syndicate and we met with some farmers there. And one of the things that I realized was that there's a disconnect between the farmers, their understanding the role of the extension workers, as well as the extension workers appreciating the kind of assistance that the farmers need. One of the ladies there was very clear in that the extension workers are not helping her. At the same time, there was an extension worker there who told us what her role was. So I think maybe there's a problem between the farmers understanding why the extension workers are on the ground and that service being given.
I'm not going to attempt to explain how extension works in every CARICOM country. I've had my share of experiences in all 14. I've worked in IT and Suriname, and I've seen what the extension services are supposed to do. What hasn't been clear on many occasions is that communication between the expectations held by the farmers and the job descriptions from which the officers work. And I think that is key. In some countries, the job description is quite specific in terms of what they're supposed to be doing. And the expectation on the farmer side could be, let's say in a Trinidad setting, the expectation is that I want you to come to assess my flood damage, but I don't necessarily want you to come to advise me. So there are administrative roles, and there are other kinds of roles, and there are all these seamless roles that extension officers are supposed to play. And I think that is where the difficulty lies.
Yeah. I think one of the problems is that, I don't know for, I can only speak for Sim, but I think extension is influenced by or perceived to be influenced by party politics. In other words, a good example is after some of these disasters that we have around here on a regular basis. We had a hurricane, and they will evaluate based on your party connections, and you will be assisted based on your party affiliation. And that in itself, what it does, it discourages people, discourages farmers, and people, and as a result, you hear a lot of complaints that, and I think we need to get these things out on the open. Sometimes we don't speak about these things because this is one of the skeletons in the closet. But we got to get politics at that level out of agricultural assistance. And basically, I think farmers should do a little bit more for themselves too. You know, and you heard the same complaints that we were at Syndicate. We have the same problems in Syndicate too. You know, that's Steve, I really like the presentation. I was thinking to myself when you say, coming back to the issue of nutrition and food, you say food is a want and nutrition is a need, and we really should be addressing the needs first, because it doesn't make any sense us going on the road telling people about a belly full when we should be selling agriculture as an instrument to improve our general health. But that's what, as far as extension is concerned, I think the politics is our major problem in St. Vincent. I don't know what is the situation in Germany now.
And just, I want to challenge Steve a bit, but before you do so, just a comment regarding what Tenby said. I think generally, I think farmers generally know what the role of extension is. But the problem is, and I think it's inherent in all farmers, farmers generally like to complain, right? And I think farmers are always at the point where they are looking for something from the government. And even though the extension officer might be there and giving all of the technical advice that there is that they can get, they are always looking for something tangible. And if they don't get that tangible thing that they're looking for, then they say they're not getting enough from extension. With regards to Steve's presentation, I want to humbly challenge you a bit. Because the impression I got from your presentation is that the message of extension has to change or is changing. And you would have gone from when we heard from Henderson that we are changing it. Of course, when we went to ECIA, that is what we heard. Extension officer is supposed to be a change agent. And I totally agree with that. And you went from when we did, of course, at that time it was primarily agronomy and that sort of thing. Crop production, animal production. Then you went to the farm and home thing when we were looking more at record keeping and so on, and the gaps and so on. But I don't believe that the message or the role of extension is changing per se. We have to realize that things are dynamic now. And it's not that the message is changing, but it's just that you're adding something to the message, and you should be giving the farmer something more comprehensive. Because of course, even the teachers can tell you that when you were growing up, I mean, there was a totally different syllabus. So they have to be adding things to the syllabus all the time. That is exactly what is happening in extension, right? Of course, when we went to the farm and home management, when we were teaching them about record keeping, the message about production didn't change. So you had to be bringing that message about production, plus the message about record keeping, and then we spoke about gaps. So it's like you're adding something to the message all the time, but not changing the role of extension per se. Now that we have this about the food and nutrition, we are all aware of the fact that with pesticide use that we have right now. I remember when I was training in ECIA, my agronomy teacher always said, when she goes to the market, she looks for a cabbage that is worm-eaten. She don't want a cabbage that is too wholesome, because that is telling you that you're using too much pesticides. Right? So now that the ambit of the food and nutrition thing has come into play, I personally believe it is something good to be added to the message that the extension officers are taking to the farmers. Because the fact is, we are all hearing that we're supposed to eat more fruits and vegetables. But if you're eating fruits and vegetables that are filled with chemicals, then it doesn't make any sense. You might as well just stay with your provisions.
It has been my experience that one of the things that isn't changing is the gap, perception gap between the extension officer and the farmer. There's a them and then us. And that was demonstrated clearly first before I came here. I was at that climate change meeting. And I was in a group, we did our group discussion. And the extension officer came up and made his presentation. I was in his group. And when I asked, but the message, how are you getting the message across? He made it clearly with some of the parallels and said that, well, you know, the extension officers are trained at the university, so they train us about these things. And I started saying, yes, you're well trained in science, how about communication? And he just couldn't follow me. And when I looked across the person who had arranged the thing, we just had an agreement that I'd stop there or not, because he wasn't getting the message. And that is happening in Jamaica, where it's at them and us. We are better than them. We're teaching them. And it comes back to the wording of the language and even dialect in terms of the communication.
because I think that's a big gap. And if the messenger doesn't believe the message, how can he or she do an effective job?
A few things. There's some powerful examples here. When Eric, this is not about you, Eric, it just happens, I'm using it as a metaphor. When Eric came, the microphone is this way, and he began to talk. Of course, he's talking to you this way. But you see, the microphone needs to be turned around. And that's what's happening a lot of the times. We come into a situation that's been handed down for generations, from England and from the UK to our colonialism, and we're still maintaining it. So we come to a situation and we start talking to the microphone and say, wait, let me turn it around. Another analogy I want to use is one from Beethoven, the famous classical composer who was deaf. When he played his famous Ninth Symphony, here's a man who's a genius. He played his Ninth Symphony, but he had no idea that it was a great performance. All he knew was he got it from on high and he wrote it and he played it. They had to lift him up and turn him around to see the audience, because he was deaf, he couldn't hear them clapping, to see the audience just giving him a standing ovation. And again, I connect that to our situation in that we have genius here. The farmers, the extension officers, when I listen to Keon and his experiences, when I listen to Diane and Lennox and Steve, I just see genius coming out. You know, we tend to think of genius, that's another thing. In the Caribbean, we tend to think of genius as Einstein. We are all in the process of genius. Those children are in the process of genius. And we need to bring it together. Yesterday or last night on television, I heard what's his name? Louis? He was, you know, he's a very excitable person. He likes to talk about his farm and so on. He was on television talking about, yes, they came to my farm and you know, they were talking about how could we do this with 6 people alone? And I remember making that comment to him, saying, how could you run this beautifully kept landscape? I mean, it's like a park. How could you keep this place? Because I grew up on a banana estate, so I know what's involved in keeping, you know, constantly taking up suckers from the bananas and keeping it clean and so on. My father was a stickler for that. So I was very impressed how we could keep 29 acres like a golf course. And he loved the feedback that he was getting from these visitors. And there's this connection between our genius that we have to make. Another example is Lennox, myself. I've been in radio since I was 19. I had no idea that, you know, I had a good voice or, you know, that I could read well. I just was looking for a job. Came out of school, they gave me a script to read, incidentally about bananas. I read it, and they said, you got the job. And from there, my life just, you know, went all over the world because of this job. The environment was always my passion. And it is only now, 20-something years later, that I have decided, listen, I'm going to stop the talking and do some action. Because I always tell people, listen, you know, the treaties are very important. That's 20 years ago I was talking that. I only now decided, listen, I'm going to form an organization and use my media skills to focus solely on the environment and history and agriculture. This man is the same thing. He's an IT specialist and a farmer. What's the connection? Right? He's one of the most prolific writers on Facebook. Talking about farming. So you see the connections. Steve Max came to St. Vincent and I was interviewed by one of my colleagues about the same thing. Again, media, environment, talking about IP, you know, and I listened to the interview twice. So my point is that...
You didn't understand what he was saying?
Too deep. But seriously, okay? What does farming have to do with IP, with intellectual property? You know, we could wake up tomorrow and hear that the word Dominica has been registered and copyrighted by somebody, and they're using Dominica. It doesn't belong to Dominica anymore. Okay? The geographic IP. So all these things, and I want to reach out, especially to my friends in Brown behind there. You know, nobody told me anything about this when I was 19. Nobody told me I could be an environmentalist or I could get a master's degree in environmental science. It wasn't, I didn't know that. So I want you to think about that find out what your purpose is. Find out what your passion is. What is it that you could do all day? And time would pass and you wouldn't even know because you like doing it. And see if you could connect it to the environment. Every young person I talk to, what do you want to be? A lawyer. a lawyer, a lawyer, a lawyer. Why? Because that's what's being pushed on you. Because a lawyer, what kind of lawyer you want to be? A corporate lawyer. There isn't even such a thing as a corporate lawyer.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. Enjoying the I'm Greg Rollins, representing Trinidad and Tobago. And it's I'm enjoying the discussions. I have been employed in the Ministry of Agriculture for some years. And one of the things that I wanted to pick on was the Alliance reference to an extension plan. And to make the point that an extension plan involves a lot more people than extension officers. And we continue to refer to extension officers. But really and truly what you need is the entire institutions that provide technical support and so on. Deliver an extension and getting researchers out in the field. Because if you look at countries like India, a country that will make a significant inroads in terms of research and development, their researchers are in the field. And this traditional approach where you have these people called extension officers that Steve referred to the whole development of extension, they can't take all the messages that you have to take. So you have to have everyone that has something to contribute in the field advising the farmers. The other thing that you need also a shift in thinking in farmers. The old time thinking that you want to see an extension officer visit you regardless if you need them or not. There's no extension time that you keep beating up on extension saying, I don't see the extension officer. If you don't need to see him, you go into the ministry, get the information you need, the new information tools we have. But the sense just complain that you haven't seen it. So that we need a change in mindset for the point of the farmers as well. But also to recognize that our institutions that provide technical assistance have to be much more on the ground and recognize that all of us are part of who deliver that extension plan that you refer to. And maybe the word extension has to be a bad word in that context. Because we still see the extension officer, that man who used to drive around years ago, who used to be able to solve all the problems in it. But the problems at that time was basic problems of crop production, keeping cattle, chickens, and so on. So one individual could have done that. But the complex issues that Steve referred to, or the demands of the day, of asking the farm to keep changing and the sector to keep changing what he delivers, demonstrates that there are a lot more people that have to be brought into this pool of delivering extension. But they are sitting down in offices and not going up there and expecting a few people who don't have the resources, who don't have the capacity very often. And it's unfair, to my mind, to the extension profession, the way that it is evolved. And that we need, therefore, to look at our institutional reforms within the Ministry of Agriculture to see how we can change the whole delivery of technical support, bringing all the people who are involved to bear, more people into the field, delivering a comprehensive, a much more integrated package of support to farmers. And therefore, we will integrate the traditional extension into that framework. And therefore, we move this current arrangement where we're beating up on the extension service as a service that is not doing their job and so on. Very often, they don't have the tools, they don't have the respect, and they don't have the authority to do the job. And we therefore need to really rethink how we go about this process of taking the messages out to the farming community.
I think in my case, I don't know for Dominic as well, one of the things maybe we need to start to look at in extension is that extension should be delivered on the basis of specialties instead of having an extension officer operating on a particular region, right? And expecting him to have all the requisite tools and experience. I think that maybe is something that we could change. And I don't know if it is practical for the larger territories, but certainly in the smaller islands, I don't see why you should have one extension officer expecting to do everything and expect to deliver for the whole constituency, whatever region you have. I think that's one of the mistakes we make.
Something that was just picking my brain as he was speaking. In situations where you do not have researchers go to the field to bring their results and whatever it is that they have gotten to be able to make a difference on the field. You have situations where farmers may be feeling that they are justified in the practices that they are doing because it has worked for them. Whether it has yielded the maximum output or not, but it has worked. This is what their father taught them, and this thing has been going on from generation to generation. and they are stuck with it, old practices, and then they do not want, you know, how people behave to change. These farmers are justified doing what they're doing, and they're happy with the output. The only time they would want to go to, let us say, the ministry or to some extension personnel or to make any queries is when they actually have a problem where something is really dying out, something is gone dreadful, or they have heard that there is this disease that is attacking, and then they're seeing wiggling leaves and things like that, and they're wondering if this is not what is happening. What is the role of the extension now, who may just be there in the area, who does this regular visits every now and again, and just basically motivates him and encourages him and keeps him in check. And at the same time, because he has a relationship with the farmer, he is able to slowly, you know, indoctrinate and bring in the new practices because he has a relationship with him. So he's able to better help him understand what he's doing, that there is, he develops that trust, that level of trust, and he's now able to work with him on better practices. That's what I was saying.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to share something from last night. I was watching Athy Martin interview the same farmer from Portsmouth who was at the point of tears and talking about the pirates are destroying his livelihood and putting the pirates ahead of him. And then he said on national television that just a cup of coffee can sustain a whole family. And he was promoting coffee as a solution, not to his problem, but to somebody else, as a young farmer. Because he's not a young farmer, so he could just live on one thing. And yet, the perception that I got from him, and the perception I continue to get in Barbados and elsewhere, is that the extension officers are lumped together with the R&D people, with the minister, with the people, as experts, as shirt and tie people, even though they don't wear no tie, and collar and tie people who are removed from their real world situation. To what extent should extension officers promote the non-traditional crops and the non-traditional practices? I'm not getting that. In Barbados, the first time the minute you call the Ministry of Agriculture, it's a chemical solution. It's still the case. And I'm sure it's still the case in many other countries. And now to the question of extension to media, I want to answer that question directly. In terms of the media's job, I still want you to understand that there are different kinds of media, and there are different roles, and there are different boundaries on those roles. If you're talking to an agricultural journalist, he's constantly in danger in the newsroom of being labeled an activist and an advocate. I'm sure Sir Jules heard that already from his editor. I don't even have to ask him, but you know he got it. So a lot of the times, we are funneling information from the farmer to the policymaker through the media, and from the policymaker, and from the R&D people, and from the economic people, and so on, back to the farmer, the backyard gardener, anyway. And that is one role. And maintaining that there is an opportunity for communications units in the agricultural ministries to be more sophisticated in the use of the tools to reach young people, as use social media, use the media in not the same old Farmer's Corner, 5:30 in the morning program that I've been listening to from 19... Hold on. So, one thing. And by the way, last year, RTA met the man who I grew up listening to. He was enjoying his retirement. But he's been replaced by another officer, the exact same program, the same 1960s music, 5 minutes talking about blues and blues and chewers and so on. I don't want to hog the show. I just wanted to get to explain that I'm very concerned that there are different roles. I see Moses, for example, doing that kind of role of really relating the information to the farmer in more direct ways and saying, look, there are non-traditional ways of doing things, and that is where the vanguard is with some media. But I think you have to be careful of becoming embedded with either the farmer or the extension officer. One last question. To what extent are extension officers plugged in to the marketing aspect of things. In other words, if they say, man, grow this, to what extent are they operating on the basis of some kind of system that says we are moving in this direction, we've identified a market for this product, and we've taken it all the way from farm to table through factory or straight.
Why it's that is because we have said, for instance, we have to be careful how we get into bed. In my case in Jamaica, for instance, the government views me and says as somewhat antagonistic because I don't always carry the government line. I take the time to know the farmers, get their respect, and when the government announces something, I ask them, I suppose it's that kind of thing. Right? In respect of you asked about the extension officers, in Jamaica, we have moved into that direction, since the gentleman can expand on that. We are in Manchester, I know for instance, where they are asked to grow the crops. The marketing division rather has a marketing, the same extension officer helps them, crop projection, what will you do in 16 weeks time, so that is happening.
No, this is just a very, very brief intervention. Julius spoke about the need to get young people involved in agriculture and the need to use social media to do so. Chris, I presented in December of last year my unit's business plan to integrate our communications unit in using social media to get to people. I am now at the implementation stage, and this is where all of us in the agricultural field is falling down. We talk and talk and talk, and yet we don't implement. So here it is, I implemented just last week our Twitter page and our Facebook page. I went to my senior directors and I said, this is what it is. Can I start it? You know what I was told? Oh, that we don't cater to that market, Mr. Thomas. And yet we're talking about getting young people involved. We don't cater to that market. So immediately I will stop. What do I do now?
Start the person, please.
The average age of farmers in Jamaica is over 60 years old. And yet we're talking about the need to get young people involved and to communicate our message to them. Yeah, I'm proposing something that is worthwhile at least, so that I'm being told, you know, do a poll. You need to do a poll in the ministry to find out who's interested, and based on that, you can implement.
Just because we do
just hold that. No.
I hope I still remember the question. Okay, we were talking about extension and communication delivery. And going back on the first presentation that Steve made, I just want to ask a couple of questions open to the floor. One of my concerns, or what I've observed, extension is normally blamed for all the pitfalls in agriculture. Now, is it really that the agriculture industry is going down, so it's making the extension job more difficult? Or is it what we're saying in this forum there, that it's because of different technologies and new things that the extension job is more difficult? What I mean by that is that, as my brother from Nevis mentioned, it's a continuous, we are impactors of change. And just as the name says, it's change, it's always changing. So bringing new technologies and bringing new knowledge to the farmer, so I don't, in my opinion, don't think that's really the problem. But I believe that the industry itself has fallen on the soul for the farmer to accept or to embrace that new change or that knowledge you bring to him is more and more difficult for him to. In the past, for say, and it still goes back to that market situation you asked about. In the past, there were steady markets, industries, and so. So you as an extension officer going and deliver something, you're delivering something based on the market standards, the market requirement. For that farmer to access that market or to get training, he had to comply with what you bring, that change, right? Whether you wanted to or not. So it made your job a bit easier. There was more, less resistance. That's one question. So is it really the extension job is getting more difficult, or the industry itself is on a change, making our job more difficult? The second thing is,
Extension officers, yes, we said their knowledge has to be vast, broad, have to handle many different situations. The master of all things, you know, to bring to the farmer. However, you find that more and more extension is being looked at as like the lowest job within the ministry, and once you get a degree or a master's and you move on, you no longer want to be an extension officer. But these are the persons that are supposed to be the extension officers, the persons that have the experience, that have the knowledge, that have been there working for many years. But once we get there, all of a sudden you no longer want to be an extension officer. And if you want to be an extension officer, for example, for me, that's all I want to do, is be an extension officer and a farmer. And people watch you like, why do you still want to stay in extension? Why are you still in extension? Why don't you go and work with Cardi or Ica, or why don't you become a consultant? I want to be an extension officer. What's wrong with that? You know? Yes, but what's wrong with that? You know? And another, a third thing, my last point is in terms of technologies and delivery, extension, delivery and communication, which we are talking about. We mentioned that it's difficult for this one extension officer to deal with 400 whatever farmers and whatnot on a one-on-one basis. What do we think of the farmer field school approach? Right? I personally, I believe in, I've been trained in farmer field schools, I've seen it work. That takes out the me as the extension officer and you, the farmer scenario. That brings the whole approach, the holistic approach into play. What do we think about the farmer field school approach?
I want to put pay to this very tired argument that farmers are resistant to change. Farmers are not resistant to change. Farmers are intelligent. If you come up with something that hasn't been proven anywhere else, unless you have an early adopter who is state-sponsored, they are going to wait and see. And one of the reasons why the farmer field school works, as well as it does, is because you are asking the farmers to be part of not just the problem, but the solution. You're working in the field with the farmers. And it is the way everything goes back to traditional. I hope you all are seeing that. This is how farmers operated before. They taught one another, they learned from one another, before they got so competitive. When we introduced the whole business of being cash crop farmers, then I had to hide my variety because I didn't want you to have the same thing in the market with me next week. But when we're all producing a different mindset, we exchange seed, which is not, nobody in the right mind will do that now, right? We exchange seed, we exchange technology. People felt comfortable to come to your farm and tell you what they were doing. Now, it's a race. And we keep looking at the changes, and I want to take my friend from Davis, not to task, but on a journey. And I'm saying that in the same way that I explained how we went from farm production to farm home to farm standards, because it's standards now, everything is standards driven now. We went the full route. We went the subject matter specialist route. At first, we had our extension officers geographically placed. So you came back from ECAF, you're supposed to know everything about everything. You drop into a district. If you end up in a district with big farmers, and you did crops as your major in ECAF, too bad. You had to find a way to feed them crops in the district, because you are going to be in a job. We realized after that, okay, that geographic base wasn't proper. We'll go the commodity route. Remember the commodity route? When you had fellows, extension officers now who were specialized in particular crops, the groups of crops. We went the full gamut with that. And I'm not saying it to be negative, I'm just saying to show that it's an evolution. And now, the latest magic bullet is what? Value chains. So you can't be a value chain officer, or you can be a value chain officer. So what you have to do now is to work as part of a consortium, and people like me have been pushing clusters and that type of thing, and that's where the road is now. So it's at Vincent that, as you know, we had Vinci Clus. The Jamaica pork experience has been the test case for clusters in this part of the road. But it was out the same thing, so that farmers are not resistant to change. Farmers are the ones who have the tires in the road. You come with a technology that is not proven. I mean, I just came back from lecturing in that IRTA course in Jamaica, this is a classic case because protected agriculture, which is the solution to most of the ills facing farmers today, is being disguised as greenhouse technology, which is rubbish, absolute rubbish. Greenhouses are just one aspect of protected agriculture. So there I was going to teach this course in Jamaica, having to come to grips with the fact that I ain't come here to talk about greenhouse technology. I come here to talk about protected agriculture, of which greenhouse agriculture is just one aspect. So you have people from all over the region coming across to Jamaica to hear about greenhouse technology and thinking that farmers are resistant to change. Under 500 meters, you're in a greenhouse, you're burning soil. So if a farmer refuses to accept a free greenhouse from you, he's not resistant to change, he's right.
Thank you very much, Steve. Unfortunately, we're just a couple of our schedule. Yeah, this discussion will have to continue as fair. But please, let's get out there early and come back in time because this session continues in effect, you know. Where people will be moderating the next session, we'll speak with information communication and knowledge management. So I guess I'm going to see issues.